Then let's take a quick look at the jobs of the platoon leader, the platoon sergeant, and the platoon guide during the approach march. First, the platoon leader. During the approach march, the platoon leader moves between the platoon scouts and the leading squad of the platoon. He is accompanied by a messenger. He is not tied to this one position. His big job during the approach march is to get his platoon safely forward. To do this, he must reconnoiter far enough ahead to locate shelled areas, gassed areas, and areas exposed to enemy observation. The platoon scouts serve as an extension of the platoon leader's eyes and ears. Much of his information comes from them. On approaching a heavily shelled area, he detours the platoon around it, if this is practicable, or he takes advantage of lulls in the fire to move his men across the danger space by individual rushes controlled by squad leaders. He must be constantly on his toes to maintain contact with his neighbors. He must see that he is maintaining the direction assigned him if he commands the base platoon. If his is not the base platoon, then he must guide on the base platoon. Finally, he must prescribe that formation for his platoon, which is dictated by his mission, the location of friendly troops, the terrain, and the enemy fire. It's a full-time job, and one that requires initiative, common sense, some imagination, and a thorough knowledge of the matters we are covering here this evening. Many of you are going to be platoon leaders, whether you want to be or not. Your duty is to learn all of this that you can. Someday the lives of many men will depend on just how well you know the platoon leader's job. You may get by with half measures in maneuvers. You may even fool some of your leaders. But in battle, you can't fool anybody, not even yourself. Now for the platoon sergeant. He usually marches near the center of the formation. But like the platoon leader, he is not tied to any one post. He goes where he needs to go to do his job. As second in command, he supervises and controls the advance of the platoon when the platoon leader is absent on reconnaissance or for any other reason. Should an emergency occur at such times, the platoon sergeant acts immediately, without reference to the platoon leader. When the platoon is not the base platoon, he assists the platoon leader by seeing that the base squad conforms to the base platoon. The platoon sergeants must be 100% ready 100% of the time to fill the job of platoon leader. Never lose sight of that fact for a moment. The platoon guide is the next senior in the platoon and therefore must be qualified to take over the duties of platoon sergeant. And if our top casualties run too deep, the job of platoon leader. The platoon guide moves in the rear of the platoon. He checks straggling. There's no falling out at this stage of the game for anything short of a broken leg or a bad wound. And the platoon guide sees that there isn't. The platoon guide also keeps an eye peeled to the flanks and particularly to the rear. If the platoon has dropped off 3 or 4 men to protect its rear, he keeps this group in sight, and the leader of that group keeps him in sight. The platoon guide immediately informs the platoon leader or the platoon sergeant of any unusual event he sees to the flanks or rear, which might threaten the platoon or alter its plan of approach. The platoon guide's job in battle is a tough one. It takes a real man to handle it as it should be handled. This winds up our key non-coms jobs in our battle formations. Are there any questions about any of them? All right, Corporal.
Sir, supposing a soldier drops out like you said, and the platoon guide sees there's nothing the matter with him excepting that he's scared, and he tells him to get up and get going, and the soldier won't do it. What would the platoon guide do then, sir?
Suppose we let one of our platoon guides answer that question. Sergeant Lawton.
Well, sir, I tell you, I think I would try to make that guy more scared of me than he was the enemy.
That's a good answer, Sergeant. A very good answer indeed. Okay, Corporal Strickland?
Yes, sir. That's just what I figured. I just wanted to make sure.